Hi, welcome to another Roguelike Deckbuilder Toolkit tutorial. This one is about the node map, which is what you're seeing here. This is not the same tutorial as the toolkit released with, because after the 1.2 update I added a bunch of stuff to the toolkit, including lots of improvements and changes to the node map. So if you've just seen the old ones, you should keep watching this one because it has changed. So for anyone old and new, you can see here that you have these nodes here. And you have connections or edges between them, and you move from one to another and encounter various different kinds of things, and you either reach the boss and win, or you die and lose somewhere along the way. So that's the general structure of the game. You see that there are many different kinds of nodes here, and I'll show them. I've strung them along so you can see all the different ones. To begin here, you can find treasures at the start, like an artifact reward. You can have story encounters, which can be many different kinds of things. Here we got a random encounter where we are meeting this creepy creature called Nøkken in Norwegian, and you can do many things. I can throw a card to distract it, and I throw this smite card at it, and then it gives it back to me with more damage. So it upgraded the card. That's one of many included story events. You have the campfire, where you can rest, or you can remove any cards that you have in your deck. I can remove a card here. And then you have the shop, where you can buy new cards for your gold. Gold is also a new addition in this update, so I can buy the aid card and it's added to my deck. And then you have, of course, combat encounters, and this would be an elite encounter. And when you click an encounter, then you jump into the encounter here. And when you win, you return back to the node map. So here is the node map in the engine, and you can find it under maps here, where we can place these node actors and connect them together. So we will be creating a new node map for the purposes of this tutorial. Simplest way to do this is probably to duplicate the existing one and then just remove the nodes. You can of course create a new one from scratch. Just be sure that to check the various blueprints that are here that are needed for the node map to function. But the easiest way, I'll just duplicate this one and I'll create a new one that I'll call node map tutorial, and we'll use that. And here we are, and we'll just take all of the nodes and we'll delete those, being careful not to delete the node map actor there. And then we'll have to place some new nodes. We'll find them under blueprints and node map. And there is BP node. We can place that here. If we hit play, we can see that's a decent starting point. You can move that around. You can move the player start around. Also, if you want to. Got some errors now because we are missing an origin node. We have to tell the node map which node we are starting at. So we'll take this node here and we'll call this the origin. When we hit play now, we can see that it is crossed out. So this represents that we have already visited this node. So there we have our starting point, and this can look like whatever we want to. We can choose the encounter type here, which I'll get into very soon, but for the origin it's just gonna change how it looks. So we can have like this rest icon starting point, for instance. And now we want to have some other nodes that we connect it to, so we can add a fresh node here, and this can be, and then we need to connect it to our origin, and we can add connections from this node. We can add as many connections as we want, and to choose one you will choose the eyedropper tool and then select the node, and we'll see that we get this connection. And if we hit play, you will see that this node that we can move to, it's bouncing up and down, and we can highlight it, and if we click it we are taken into an encounter, as you can see here. Oh, and I have the deck selected for all different cards. I will change it back to just the default one. This is something that's useful to know. and has changed in the recent update. So we'll go into the game instance and go to our starting heroes, and here we can change the deck that our hero has. I'll change it from the test deck to a starter deck. There. Okay, so what specifically happens when you go to one of these nodes is determined by what you have selected in the map event data here. So you can change this to some other kind of event, and let's create a new node with something different. We'll connect this one to that as well. And here you can see the different kinds of encounters we have. So we have various combat encounters like the one you saw, the boss, easy, elite, and normal encounters here. But you also have other ones like rest, shop, story, and treasure, which put you into various kinds of story events. So for rest and shop, you always get the same specific story event. You get the rest story event, or you get the shop story event or encounter. While with story you get a random one which does not include these two. I'll go into later how these are picked, but we can select rest here. You can see that it changes to the rest icon, and when we go here now we get this pop-up story menu where you have a background and you have text describing the event and various kinds of options that you can choose from. And each of these buttons are actually a card. So if you've seen my tutorials on cards, you'll know a lot about how they work. They might have a cost. There might be a button you can't press unless you have enough health or you have enough gold, etc. And when you click them, they will play a card effect. You'll also have ones that, well, the only thing they do is the card effect is closing the story encounter, so you can continue on to the next node. So story encounters, like I said, they are a few different ones that come included. To give you some examples, and let's see what we get. So here is one where you can take the long way around some poisonous fog, or you can push through it and take damage. We can see that here. If we push through, then we took some damage. And then we can choose to open a chest and stay in the fog a bit more, where we take more damage, but we also gain an artifact. And here we got some gold and we got a new artifact. And then we can continue on from there. So there are many different included story events, just to give you some ideas of how you can set up story events of your own. Right, so then how do the nodes know what to do when they are clicked? How do they use the data here to pick a specific event? So it does this by using, let's go back to the node map folder here, and a map event it is called, which runs, which is set up to look at the specific data table input here and choose an event. And we can look at how this is set up in the data under node map and under map events. So here you can see the different kinds of events that we can encounter. So each of these have, as you see, they have an icon, which is how it is displayed here on the map. And we have a map event class. So this is what type of map event component is spawned when you click this node, and then the map event component is what decides what to do. Then you can specify some things here. Should there be a specific event that this map event calls? This might seem a bit redundant, but I'll show how this works. So you have, like as in the rest event here, you can see that it calls a story event, and then it tells this story event component to use a specific event. We want to encounter this specific story encounter called rest. So that is how you can have these call a specific event. And then you have ones like the story here, which rather calls a random event. So you have the same map event class, the story one, but instead of calling a specific event, it chooses from an array of different encounter tables. and within those encounter tables it looks at the rarity of the different things you can encounter here, and picks one encounter based on the odds. You'll see for the story events here that you have only the like all of the default included story encounters. Those are of the common rarity, so this will give you an equal chance of encountering any of those story events. And then I have made like a custom invalid event with a 0% chance. So this only happens if all the other story events have been encountered. So you have no more to encounter, then you encounter this placeholder invalid event. You will see that the combat encounters are similar in that they have an encounter table that they are looking for. Instead of having weights assigned to like the different kinds of rarities of encounters, instead it has like a required tag here. So it looks for, okay, I only want to encounter any encounters of the normal rarity which are within this table, is what it says here. Now this might all seem a bit abstract, so let's create a new encounter so I can concretely demonstrate how this works. So we can add a new one, but it's often useful in data tables to create a duplicate of whatever we want to start with. So let's start with like the simplest kind. We want to have a specific event. So then I'll start with the rest event here because that's similar to what we want. And I'll duplicate it and I'll create a new one and I'll call this tutorial, and we'll have to find some icon for this thing. I mean, lots to choose from here. Let's take this book, and then we want to encounter some specific event. So we say okay, within the story encounters, sure, I want to encounter the, let's say, so the card players encounter. So I create that and save. And now I can, yeah, let's create a new node here. Why not? And yeah, I'll have this connected to this one, and we'll say that we want the tutorial event. We'll also connect it to the start so it's easier to test for us multiple times here. And now if we start and we have this new event here, and we'll always get taken into this card players event here. So that's how you can set it up to call some specific event. Now it works the same way with combat encounters, so we can take this encounter and we can change the encounter type here to arena, and then we can change this, find it within our combat encounters, and let us pick like the troll spider encounter, and now if we play we should encounter that specific encounter, and we do. As mentioned, you'll see all the different encounter types you can choose within here. So these are the ones really arena, story, and treasure, while the multi event, that is really used to drive this logic which chooses between multiple different events. So you don't have to specify using the multi-event. The node uses the multi-map event by default to choose between various different kinds of events. So within this node map data, we always choose one of the other three. But let's look at how to set up a random encounter. So we can look at our tutorial event again, and we'll then remove this specific event we have here. If you have a specific event chosen, it will always be picked, so it will override anything happening later on here. But if we have a random one, we have to say, okay, what encounter tables do we want to pick stuff from? So you can have multiple different encounter tables. And for this, I should open the combat encounter table so we can take a look at that. You can duplicate this, create new combat encounter tables of your own, have multiples of them, and pick the ones you want to choose. The default kit only comes with this one encounter table. Here you can see the different combat encounters that are included. And what I wanted to note here is the tags that they have. So all of these just have a single tag, associated with them, which is really an encounter tag. You can see that some of these are easy. This is normal, this is normal, this is elite, this is boss event. So you can have these two, these two are the elite ones. So we can say, okay, in our map events for the tutorial, we want to pick from the encounter table. So combat encounters. So now we are picking an encounter from here. Now if you don't have any weights or anything for this, then we're just gonna get a completely random encounter from all of the ones within the table. But we can then go and specify required tags. So we can say, okay, we only want to have elite encounters for this. And now if we choose, it should be one of the two elite encounters. Yeah, we get this one, which is one of those. You could go a lot more fancy here and have like multiple requirements, and in your combat encounter you can have all sorts of arbitrary tags. They don't need to be encounter tags. You can just say that this is a curse encounter, whatever that means, and have these different kinds of tags. The system doesn't care what kind of tags they are. They just it just tells this map event to look at combat encounters, all of the events that are within here, and find the ones that have these tags, and then choose a random one between those. And if you want even more control, you can then have you can also then have tag weights. And if you have tag weights, you don't really need to use the required tags as well, because this just gives you even more control. So here we can say that for an easy encounter, I want this to be like a 50% chance, and for like the boss encounter, I want it to also be like 50% chance. And now of course this will be hard to demonstrate that it is a 50% chance unless we keep playing like loads of different times and see that it happens around halfway. Yeah, we got lucky. So that's how you can choose that, and this doesn't have to add up to 1, by the way. It's just simpler to keep it straight in your head that way, but you could take this to be 100 and this one to be 50, and it would work the same way. It's just how are these weights proportionally to each other. One thing to note is also that the toolkit is set up in such a way that you won't encounter the same encounter multiple times if possible. If there are other available encounters that also meet the requirements for tags here that have not already been encountered, those will be encountered first. And if you've encountered all of them, then it will go back and start randomly choosing encounters. That's the way it works with combat encounters. For story encounters, after you've seen all the encounters, it then just gives you this invalid debug encounter each time you go into a story encounter. But that is fairly easy to choose as well if you don't want it that way in your game. Before we end this tutorial, we will look at how to create a new combat encounter as well. And for this, let's create a new table just to demonstrate this too. So I'll just say combat encounters tutorial here, get a duplicate. You can of course also just create a new data table and choose the appropriate struct for this. Just quicker to duplicate sometimes. And then for this, I'll just have one new encounter here. And so yeah, this can be boss is fine. We'll just have one encounter, and we have to choose what minions that we're encountering in this combat encounters. And you choose that from a minion data table. Again, you can create your own tables for this. You can have as many tables as you want. So this is the only one that comes by default. So let's see, we want to encounter a spider. And we also want to encounter then, by the way, for anything in the data table, this is very useful to know. You can take the entire, or you can take any of these or this array or something, and you can copy this stuff. So going into like other encounters that you're looking at, and then copying stuff over can often be quicker than setting stuff up manually. So for this, I'm copying this in here. So now we have 2 spiders, and now I can easily switch this to say like the wizard instead, and then you have a reward, and now you have a custom rewards data table, which really is many different kinds of cards that get played, which give you a reward. And I want to get here in elite reward for defeating these 2. And you can also specify what level that you are loading. So the only level that comes included with the toolkit is this arena level, but you can create other ones. Just input the name of your arena and it will take you to that arena instead. So now you have a new encounter here, and we'll just call this also tutorial. And then for our map events, we'll have this tutorial encounter here, and we'll choose our encounters from this new data table. And so the probabilities here, we only have this one event, so we don't use any tags for this. And now we should encounter this new encounter. If we go to the tome, and you have a spider and this wizard to defeat. I won't be able to beat them, so we can see the reward that we get since my cards are too weak. But yeah, trust me that that's gonna work as well. Or, you know, don't trust me, and I can show you. If we go to the cards here, I'll just buff our smite like up to doing like 200 damage, so we can kill them easily. And while we're at it, let's make a new arena as well. So let's just duplicate this arena, and we'll just call this arena 2. And yeah, sure, let's save, and let's just add some stuff here. We'll just place some basic geometry into our scene so we can differentiate this scene from, or this arena from the other one. Now within our combat encounters, I mean the map events here, no, I did mean our combat encounters, this new one, then we can choose our arena 2 here as the one. Let's go back to our node map, or our custom node map, and if we select this, you see that we are in our new arena. We have our ridiculously overpowered cards, we'll just give a lot of screen shake, and now we get our elite reward, which includes like coins, and we get a nice card reward and an artifact. And we're back, yeah, we're back to this node map, by the way. So we're not back to our tutorial node map. That's also one thing that's useful to note, that you can choose this within your game instance. Then you have the current node map, which is the one used here. And what did we call our node map again? I'm going really quick here, so I hope you're following along. Node map tutorial. And this will make this our default node map. So now when we defeat these enemies here, then we will be taken back to, I'll just skip the rewards here, our custom node map. So this is something to keep in mind also. If you want to have multiple node maps, right, you maybe want to make something which is common in the genre, to have after you defeat a boss here, you get to another node map, and then you defeat maybe another boss and get to a third node map with a final boss or something like that. If you want to do that, just make it so that when you defeat the boss, then you also change the value which is stored within current node map in your game instance, and then you will transition to this next map. But that's it for this video, I think. So in the next one, I'll go into creating new story events, the ones you see where you can choose various options with buttons of stories you encounter along the way, and that's a big enough topic to be covered in its own video, I believe. So hope you're looking forward to that one, and I'll see you there.